like the one thing that everyone does have in common in the fitness community is that they're all trying to get better at life, at this, at X thing. They're always trying to get better. So if you ignore the fact that someone has trauma, you can have the fittest body in the world, but if like your mind isn't there, then you're not really getting the full scope of what you could.
We're
be
not talking about
capable of.
health.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi guys, and welcome back to the Thick Thighs Save Lives podcast. I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Isley.
Hi, Isley.
Hey.
So Isley's joining us today on the podcast, and as we're setting up, I'm like doing a sound check with her. I'm like, Isley, I just need you to like talk into the microphone for a little bit. She goes, hi. And I was like, can you say a sentence? And she goes, I love microphones. Yes, I do.
You gotta sing it a little bit. You gotta let the microphone know you're into it.
I was like, can you not sing a sentence? So I can test your mic.
We got there in the end.
We did get there, and now it's going to be great.
It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be totally awesome.
It's going to be totally awesome. I'm actually really excited to talk about today's topic because for a couple of reasons. Number one, I have a million waters.
I get thirsty.
I don't think that we talk about how trauma relates to weightlifting enough. And I don't think how we talk about the types of relief or therapy that people are getting while they're showing up to the gym enough in general. I think like we talk about it.
Yeah.
But honestly, to have some science and some language behind it really makes a massive difference.
It makes a huge difference. And it's also really cool to just like, everyone knows that when they work out, they feel better, but you don't always know why. You're just like, well, I feel better when I move. And it's like, there's legitimate science that backs it up. And like, not only that, like we all know like that trying hard things in a safe environment makes us feel better in a less feeling, like safe feeling environment, but we don't know why. And we don't always understand how much of an impact that training actually has on us outside of the gym other than just inside of the gym. And I think it's overlooked like way too much.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. And like even for people who have been in the game for a while, like the idea, it's not a new idea that training makes you feel better.
No.
And we can look back at our journey from years and be like, have I healed physically, mentally?
I'm a different human.
Yeah. Have I grown?
Yeah.
But like what's attributed to that? It's taken a long time. And, you know, once you get those patterns, you say like, I want to keep these, but putting some real concrete language and some studies behind it and just like I said, like the science behind it is affirming.
Yep.
I guess
it is. I'm a big why person. I'll why something to death. I'll be like, why? I don't know why. I like to ask why. But it's really nice to, yes, have information behind it. It was really a cool class that I took on it. So,
well, let's talk about that for a little bit because they're like, what are you guys talking about?
Yeah.
So Isley is, well, just say what you did.
So I'm a coach, obviously, and I found this course online called Trauma Informed Weightlifting. And it's actually put out by the JRI Institute, which you have worked with, which I thought was really cool. And that's in Boston, which is also really cool because it's so close. And it's called Trauma Informed Weightlifting, and it goes over like what trauma is and how all of us have experienced some type of trauma, whether we know it or not, because a lot of times people don't always know why they're reacting a certain way. They just know that they are reacting a certain way. And once you can kind of figure out the why behind a reaction that maybe you don't love or why you are acting a certain way, that really helps you grow as a human. And so it kind of goes over that, and then it brings it into why weightlifting actually can help heal those traumas and helps heal trauma that you're holding in your body, as well as a coach, how to approach other people in that space that have been traumatized and how to make sure that they say not to like do no harm, because the fact of the matter is we're all going to do harm. The intent behind it is what makes it different. And if we are intentionally trying to help someone and we end up harming them, the harm isn't always harmful, right? It's more like you found something out and now we get to work through this together. And a trauma informed coach helps someone who's working through their traumas with weightlifting. So it's almost like sort of therapy, but you're not going to call it therapy exactly unless you are a therapist or unless you actually have a full-on degree in therapy. But you can still be informed and help people with what you have to bring to the table.
Oh,
So I think 100%. It's
cool. I mean, that's with my background, trauma-informed care is very important in it's just being able to approach someone in a trauma-informed sense is a really important part of your relationship building with them.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean necessarily that you have to be an expert.
Nope.
And it doesn't mean you have to be an expert in their trauma. And it doesn't even mean that you have to fully understand their specific trauma, because people have such a range of trauma and where they experience it along the way. And where they are in that journey and how comfortable they feel with you, or even if they're willing to address any of that.
Or if they're even aware it's going on.
Or if they're even aware if they've gaslighted themselves into thinking it doesn't exist.
Nope, yeah.
There's such a range. But the important part about being a coach and being trauma informed is that you're able to approach people in a caring, authentic way that is conducive to an attempt to heal some of their trauma, or creating an environment where they can deal with it themselves. And that, I think, is the really important part of just being any trauma-informed
anything
care.
At all. Yeah.
And it's really important for coaches because you are leading individuals who are coming from, and I think, like, you know, as we get into our adult lives, you have people coming from so many different walks of life, so many different experiences, and they're all coming to this one thing for whatever reason that is. And then to be able, especially for our community, is all over the world.
And like the one thing that everyone does have in common in the fitness community is that they're all trying to get better at life, at this, at X thing. They're always trying to get better. So if you ignore the fact that someone has trauma, you can have the fittest body in the world, but if like your mind isn't there, then you're not really getting the full scope of what you could be.
We're not talking about health.
Yeah, exactly.
It's healthy. So just to dive into it, like, what is trauma?
So trauma is a concept that describes the ways that body experience and adapt to expressing harm or abuse or neglect. So it's just kind of how your body is reacting to the fact that it's been through a situation that it didn't love, and also your brain going through a situation that you didn't love. And so, like, I have a 4-page thing of notes. Sorry, guys. I took many notes. And so for coaches, like, this means to take notice of the trauma history that your athletes might have, whether they've told you or if you're just looking at their body language or how they respond to certain questions that you ask them, or anything. Like, do you have an athlete that's coming in and they're like, I am all good, I'm wicked confident, like not worried about anything that you're going to ask me to do? Or do you have someone that's a little bit more timid and like you ask them to do something and they're just not sure and they don't trust themselves or their bodies to do this movement? You know?
Yeah. I think that's super relatable to everyone, because we don't necessarily always think about a lack of trust with yourself and your body as an expression of trauma. And it's a really important one, because it comes down to like really small things where like people come in and they might be in just like really oversized clothing and be pulling at it all the time. Or you ask them to maybe do something that you can see that they are physically capable of, and they're really hesitant to even try. And, throwing someone into the flames when they are so hesitant is really, it's not it.
It's not it. It's not it. Like, you might get one
an eloquent more way to say it's not it, but it's not.
It's not the vibe.
This is not the vibe. And sometimes we can even expect that from ourselves, because we want to ignore, and I'm just going to say this straight out, we want to ignore all of our experiences that brought us to whatever place we are in when we enter in the gym, with the expectation of, I need to be smaller. I need to be fit right now. I need to fit into pants that I wore in high school. I need to be who I was before a baby. I need to ignore every life experience that I've had coming into going to the gym, and I just need to fit some aesthetic.
Yep.
Now that is so wildly inappropriate.
Yep. Yep.
But we do it to ourselves.
We do. Most of us are the worst offenders of doing it to ourselves. And we will look at a friend and we'll be like, oh, no, you don't need to be all of these things to be good. For me, this might not be for everyone. We feel the need to meet these expectations to get love from our peers, whatever. So that's kind of, I think everyone wants to be loved. I don't think that I'm wrong in saying that. So a lot of us feel that we will get this love either from ourselves or from someone that we care about if we meet these things, when that's not true.
Yeah. Well,
sorry.
Essentially, that's not the type of love that
you're looking for.
Seeking.
Exactly.
Because
not a healthy love.
It's not authentic.
No.
Yeah, it's not unconditional for sure. But unconditional starts with the unconditional love for yourself.
Yes.
So like let's just
so
throw
if you can't
that
cut
out.
yourself some slack.
Well, the language behind that sounds like I'll be confident when I reach this weight, when I look like this. That you are saying straight out, my love for myself is conditional upon what my body looks like. Now, if you start that out from your baseline, of course you think that's the expectation for other people as well. And maybe that's the one you've put on in your relationships. But the idea, just to circle back to, the idea that you enter in the gym and we forget all of our experiences and we say, like, regardless of your schedule, regardless of, your kids, you need to spend this much time in the gym. You need to be able to reach these goals in this much in 3 months and 6 weeks. All of these things that ignore every life experience coming into that. Now, what we're going to talk about today is kind of specific to weightlifting. And I think it's really I don't think we've talked about it enough, because I think in general, sometimes when we talk about, people using fitness as a means to heal some trauma, I see a lot of running being at the forefront of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of running, which running is great. Running if you
great.
enjoy it, that's awesome. You do obviously get those endorphins from moving and all that other stuff. But lifting, they did a study in the 1980s, and it's like strenuous activity. So lifting heavy things actually has the highest impact on people with PTSD or like trauma disorders. And I think that that's just so cool. There's like all this science that backs it up, and I was like, I love it. So other than the fact that you get some physiological changes with the way that you have to breathe to lift a weight, or the things that you have to like connect and say that, what is my body feeling right now? Helping you kind of check in with your body in a way that you might feel more comfortable with, other than meditation for some people. And that's why weightlifting is a form of meditation, because you are checking in with your body when you're lifting the weight.
The first time I heard that,
yeah,
I think I sent it to you. The first time I heard of what was called active meditation.
Yes.
I was blown away. So many of you guys might not know this or have heard this term of active meditation, because I thought that the only way for me to meditate, be a successful meditator, was to sit still. And I do think there's a place for that for me personally in my life. But I had never connected the fact that, like, when I get to clear my mind the most, when I am doing something that's active.
Yep. Yeah.
Like when I'm lifting, I'm not thinking. I even made a video about this. It was like your mind before you start a lift, and it was like screaming in chaos. And then it's like, as soon as you start the lift, it was just like peace,
silence. Yeah.
For some of us, that's the thing.
It is. Yeah. No, there's actually reading. We'll get into it a little later in this podcast, but they were talking about like the two types of internal and external cueing. And I was like seeing, you and I are different athletes, right? So one of us is more into something than the other, and we both need to do the opposite thing to be better, right? So so for you, movement is extremely meditative. That's a word.
Yeah.
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 Words.
Yeah, no, that active, like, I'm like, oh, I've reached this zen.
Yes.
And like for a lot of people, they're like, no, I do
Yeah.
not feel that
It
zen there.
was it was like that time that that I was like, I think I just kind of checked out for a minute in the middle of that workout and I could like hear you and I was trying really hard, but I couldn't really feel anything. And you were like, yeah, it's like an outer body experience. And I was like, yeah. You were like, I love it. I was like, that was one of the first times I've been there, but it was neat.
But it was neat. I looked around. I was like, okay. So can you talk a little bit more about the psychological changes and some of the social benefits of lifting?
Yeah. So strength has meaning and value in society for everyone. But for me, it's kind of just when you feel strong, but in a certain movement or in a certain activity, that will carry over into your confidence in other places. Um, and so it like the strength has meaning and value. Also, depending on the gym that you go to, has social benefits. You make friends that are into the same things you are. Obviously, our community knows all about that because now we have 80,000 friends
Yeah.
that are really supportive. Um, some of like the physiological changes, like for grounding, when you're feeling the floor through your feet. If you've ever heard us cue you to push through the ground with your feet, that's grounding. Breathing, you have to focus on how you're breathing if you want to move a weight properly, if you want to brace properly. You really have to check in with your body to be able to perform a lift. And so it offers like that in a safe way. So when you're doing a lift, a gym is a safe experience for most of us, or we feel that that is an environment in which we have control over.
Mm-hmm.
So we feel safe there to put ourselves through that stressor. When you repeatedly put yourself under a stressor in a safe environment, that will translate into maybe an environment that you have less control over and you're in a stressful place. And your body's just kind of like, oh, I've been somewhere really similar to this. I'll be fine.
Mm. That always putting language to that is super helpful for me, of course. But I'm a big person who believes that like you need to practice the things to be good at them,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to practice your responses to stressful situations.
Yep.
And that's something like we don't talk about enough because you think like, oh, everyone is going to face stressful situations. Okay, but do you practice? Do you practice your response to them?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can tell you my responses to stress prior to weightlifting were very different than my
Mm-hmm.
responses to stress now. And my resilience in the level of stressful situations that I could take and still take in stride, my resilience was so much lower.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because it just wasn't in practice.
It wasn't you weren't used to like failing something and being okay with it and viewing failure as less of oh no, this is all ruined and more of a redirect, redirect,
Yeah.
redirect, and eventually we'll get to the goal.
Yeah. I mean,
And
imagine practicing, failing over and over
mhm,
and feeling like, oh, that's okay.
yeah, like you
I'm
survived,
fine.
you were fine,
Yeah.
it was all good,
Yep. But
and
that's a safe environment
it's
to
just
fail
yeah, exactly.
because, like, you don't want to fail jumping out of a plane.
No, no, that's one spot where you hopefully do not fail.
I also like that when you fail in a safe environment and you face some of your fears in a safe environment, that it alters your responses to some of the triggers you face in your outside life.
Mhm.
I think that's a really important piece for people to hear.
Mhm.
That like you're practicing this, yes, of course, but you have responses or triggers in your everyday life
Mhm.
that you may notice or you may not, right? It may be in your interpersonal relationships, maybe in your job, it may be in your stress levels, but you can kind of say like, oh, that's a response I would like to adjust
Mhm.
sometimes.
Yep. Yeah, I like the wording that you said because I don't like calling things bad
Yeah.
because all emotions truly do have a place in what we need.
Mhm.
We're feeling something for a reason and calling it bad isn't fair
Yeah.
to ourselves.
Hmm.
Um cuz it's like it's not bad to just feel uncomfortable or it's not bad to feel sad, or it's not bad to feel mad.
Mhm.
But in society, a lot of us, especially women,
Yeah.
are supposed to be happy all the time, and those more uncomfortable or unsavory emotions are not viewed in a positive way. When in reality, we will not grow without them.
Yeah.
Growth is impossible if you are happy all the time, or if you are
Discomfort. Yeah.
without discomfort. Like it is impossible to grow.
Yeah.
And so I love that you said that.
Will you talk about some of the trauma reminders and what those look like?
Yeah. So trauma reminders can trigger your body into thinking that it was in a situation that was completely unsafe. So an example of that, and I guess I should say this is a trigger warning. There was a gal in my group that was a survivor of sexual assault. And so her going into a bench press position with her legs open and belly open and completely vulnerable was not good. Like she was not into it. And so once again, as a coach, you have to be able to recognize that someone's not comfortable doing that. Because for a lot of us that haven't maybe been in that situation, we'll just get into a bench press position, zero thoughts about it. And for her, that would re-trigger her, and you might not know why she's acting. Maybe her reaction is the way it is. You just all of a sudden see your athlete not wanting to work with you, or crying at random, or you don't know whatever thing that this triggered in her or them. And so without being informed that that could potentially be a weird situation for someone, you wouldn't understand why they're acting the way they are. And then how are you supposed to help them if you can't understand that? And they won't always have the language to tell you, or the comfort level to tell you that they're feeling triggered. So you have to be able to recognize that if you're working with them. There is also, I've had other athletes that are not comfortable in the front squat position because the bar is choking them. And if they are also a survivor of domestic abuse, then that's a very similar feeling. And even though they are in a safe place, just that feeling will trigger your brain into thinking that it is however many months, weeks, years back to that unsafe situation. And your brain is going to respond in kind to that. You're going to have all these chemicals and all these fight or flight things, or whatever your trauma response is, because there are many different trauma responses. Fight or flight is very common. Freeze is common. There's a couple other ones that are less common, but it's going to trigger it, and your body is in a high agitated state. And so you might not know why that happened, but it still happened, and it's something to work through. And so that's what a trauma reminder is.
Can you talk about a couple of the less common ones? Because I think people can see themselves in them, but they're not as well known as like fight or flight or freeze.
I was gonna say I'm more of the uncommon ones. Like obviously in certain situations I'll have fight or flight. But the less well-known ones are faint, which actually my roommate does, Casey. If like something really bad happens, she's going down. She's passing out. She's done. Yeah. Then there is fawn, which is kind of where you just start people pleasing. So if someone is angry with you, you're just trying to do anything to make them not mad. I'm really bad at that one. I will, depending on the person, if I really care about you, I will reverse out. I'll reverse Uno that situation and try to do anything to make you happy. There's also fool around and fidget, which is like making anything into a joke. Both of us do that one pretty bad. Like something funny happens and we're like, ha ha, it's a joke. And it's like someone died and we're like, ha ha.
I think I really like to just present some of those as trauma responses to some people, because even if that's not you, even if you're like, why would anyone laugh in that situation? You need to recognize that everyone's trauma responses do not look atypical. They don't look the same.
Nope.
And they can be completely emotionally inappropriate.
Yeah, it's like one time before I moved here, when my ex broke up with me, I got a text message and I laughed at it.
Yeah.
Like I laughed at it. I was not okay. Yeah. But I was laughing alone in bed at it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what my brain's doing there, but here we are.
I don't know what my brain's doing. Well, I think it's really important for just anyone who sees someone else have that emotional
Yes,
response, and to not immediately go to what I think we want to go to,
which
is
is
that
their
they don't
announcement.
care.
Yeah.
Yeah, that they aren't taking this seriously, that they aren't sad enough
Yeah.
for my
That's a huge one if
sad
someone's not
gauge.
sad enough for you,
Yeah.
for what you think is an appropriate amount of sadness.
Yep.
It's like, well, actually, they're probably just responding however their brain is wired to respond.
Yeah. I've also, so like, I've had those responses before, but I've also watched them happen in another person, another one of my friends on Isley. And I've watched her go through like a really like traumatic time and then start like hysterically laughing. And then me being like, huh, like, it's so
You're like, this is odd.
extreme to watch, to be able to experience.
Mhm.
And that's coming from someone who has a lot of experience in this
Mhm.
area, and then being like, that's what that looks like, huh, from the outside. And just
Yep.
like being able to recognize that as being a response that deserves as much compassion
As
as it.
someone that's crying.
Yes.
Yep. It
Yeah.
does, 'cause they're not okay, but
They're not
they
okay.
look okay.
Yeah. Well, okay, buddy.
Yeah, yeah. You know what I'm
um
saying.
so in what ways, so like you talked about that it's shown that strenuous activity um has the highest impact on people with PTSD.
Mhm.
Is there any other like impacts that they like talked about in this course, for exercise specific?
Yeah, so, I'm sorry if this sounds a little bit reedy offy,
Yeah.
but so they think of this because of the muscle brain crosstalk or the muscle brain endocrine loop, which is that muscle contractions will literally change your brain chemistry. So when muscles react or contract, they release myokines. I hope that I'm pronouncing that right. I looked it up and it said I was. And they send chemical signals to the body or brain that promotes neurogenesis, which improves cognitive function. Um, so some of the cognitive function that like the improvements that are happening is in the hippocampus, which is in your temporal lobe, which is like right in the center of your brain. And that's also the memory center of your brain that often becomes inactive or underactive
Mm,
because of trauma.
yeah.
So that's why a lot of people with depression or PTSD issues have memory issues
Yes.
because it's literally just not working.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when this happens, when you're sending all these chemicals through your brain, it's using the same exact uh, neurological pathways that trauma does,
Mm-hmm.
and but it's like reprogramming them in a better way. So
Yeah.
it's like you have this path with all of these negative feelings and all these negative things, and you're putting them through like a positive one.
Mm-hmm.
um and it's just it's changing how those pathways are formed or what feelings you have associated with them.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost I enjoy giving visuals, so it's almost like you have a gross brown wall
Mm.
in your room and you're now repainting it your favorite color,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So your brain's just doing that by going through all of these safe but stressful situations after having gone through traumatic situations.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And even just like waking up, a
waking,
part of your
getting anything to
brain that
go.
has gotten to like an atrophy
Well, and
state. That's how like I always like think about, because I always relate things back to muscles. Like as much
yeah.
as I've learned about some of these things, I like relate them back to muscles. I'm like, so it's like sending, to a place that hasn't gotten like a whole bunch of blood, so it's just like kind of like dying out. It hasn't gotten blood, it hasn't gotten circulation, so we're going to send a whole bunch of blood there and just like start to recirculate. Like that's how it
Mm-hmm.
works
No,
for
that's
me.
totally what it is. Yeah.
So that like it starts to wake up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to happen overnight.
Not gonna happen overnight. Also, it's not always a beautiful and wonderful
No.
thing. Like that's where the being trauma informed is important, because if you're waking something up that is literally suppressing memories because it does not want to remember them,
Yeah.
you're going to get some nasty shit coming back up, and
Mm-hmm.
everyone that's involved in this process should hopefully be as prepared as they can to deal with that, so
Mm-hmm.
that this time it is a better way to work through it alone or together. And as a coach, that's what you are trying to provide. As a trauma-informed coach, that is what you are trying to provide them.
Yep.
You're trying to provide them so that they do not feel alone going through this thing. A way to work through that, and they don't have to love whatever situation. You don't ever have to love whatever situation you went through, but being able to touch it without having it burn you every single time is going to make life a lot easier. You know?
That's a really great point.
So I think it's wicked cool that it does that. Also, muscles increase the amount of an enzyme in your body. It had a really long name, so I didn't even try to write it down. And it breaks down the neurotransmitters that are actually shown to cause symptoms of stress and depression. So the more muscles that you have, they're like literally, and they're like fighting off depression with whatever chemicals they're releasing, because they're letting these chemicals out that are breaking down those transmitters, and I think that's really cool too.
I'd love to think of muscles in there, just like fighting off depression. That's like a literal, like the best, like insider. Like you're like, oh, the bigger my muscles are,
give them the old one too.
Give them the old one too. So can you talk about weightlifting having, you said, some of the highest direct effects on avoidance? Can you talk about that for a little bit?
Yes. So movement promotes somatic regulation and interoceptive awareness. So interoceptive awareness is the ability to notice and also regulate what you feel like inside of your body and brain. A lot of us, unfortunately, or a lot of people that have been through trauma or have been, even just life in general, teaches us to ignore how we are feeling.
Yes.
Right? So it takes away that interoceptive awareness. And when you are lifting or putting yourself through a strenuous situation, you don't really have a choice but to pay attention to what your body and what your brain is feeling. You absolutely have to check in, because you have to brace to be able to move that weight. Or if you are pushing it really hard in like a Metcon, your body and your insides are going to let you know exactly how they feel about that. You cannot ignore it. The difference is that you're feeling these things in an environment that you basically have all control over. So it's your choice to control how you're feeling. And so you either get to say, I'm going to touch these feelings that don't feel great, or I'm not going to. And when you have that control, it's safer for you to feel, and you're more willing. Most of us are more willing to touch those things because we're like, I'm in control and I can make it stop whenever I want.
Yeah.
So weightlifting and strenuous activity, it allows you to notice that, tolerate these things, and also, like, when you're, like I said, when you're doing that in a safe environment, it helps you maybe in an outside environment of life where you don't have control, and then you're more confident to take on whatever situation might come to you. And also, since they're both stress responses, they're using, once again, the same pathways. And so you're essentially priming it in a safe environment versus priming it in an unsafe environment.
I think that's so cool.
I love it.
I think it's so cool, first of all. And I think that a lot of us can relate to the fact that many people who have experienced any type of trauma, specifically trauma towards their body, want to separate themselves from that trauma as much as that they can, and separate themselves from their body.
They don't feel safe in their body. Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea behind bringing you back into your body, for a lot of people who are just starting their fitness journey, is bringing them back into a safe into an unsafe environment. And then we question why people don't want to stay at the gym and don't want to go to the gym in the first place, or don't want to try something new, put themselves into an environment where they don't know what's going to happen, or that they are literally having to come into a space where they have to feel things that have historically been unsafe for them. And I just want to start with a space of understanding from that. And then when we move into our healing space, which is, the next step, once you start coming back into your environment, into your body, which historically you have felt has betrayed you, been unsafe, been a space where you wanted to take yourself out of. And then you start to build confidence when you're staying in it. I feel my feet on the floor. I feel my breath. I control my breath. I control this weight. I control, this entire situation here at the gym, what I'm going to do, how hard I'm going to push. And then you start to say, I will stay in my body for a little bit longer. Take that a step further. I will start to treat my body a little bit better.
It's my home.
It's my home.
And
you come back into your home.
Yeah.
Like, how cool is that?
It's cool. I think it's rad. Like, it's because there are many environments that if we feel unsafe in them, we can leave. Our body is not one of them.
Yes.
So the little bit of tough love there is like, you got to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so this is the way to help figure it out and help you feel at home in your home, because your body is the one home that you will have from your first breath till your last breath.
Yeah.
That is your home. And so learning how to feel safe there is really important.
It is really important. And it's something that a lot of times, like, we've had to practice.
It does take a lot of practice for a lot of people.
For a lot of, and one that we have to just keep on going. And that's why I continuously say, fitness isn't a start and end, because you're not exiting your body at any point during that time. You're always in there. You're always going to have to figure it out. And you're going to be at different, times in your journey in this life where you have a better connection with your body, and then you kind of have not so great of a connection with your body.
It's just like any other relationship.
Ebbs and flows. Yeah. And like all of those are totally fine, but you're never going to leave it. So it's not going to start and stop, because like your life isn't stopping and starting.
No.
You're always going to be in there. And I can tell you that, like, the deeper you get into this, and like, I don't know if everyone thinks this is as cool as I do. But I do know, I can tell you from experience that the feelings that you get from living in your body when you feel that it is competent, that it is strong, that you are in control of it, those feelings change your person.
They change who you are. They change how you feel about what you are capable of. Like your confidence skyrockets when you are comfortable and secure within yourself. And this should also be noted that actually has nothing to do with what you look like.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Any of this.
I mean, none of the, okay, so we've talked a lot about like fitness, how that relates.
Yeah.
None of that has been mentioned.
Of what you look like. It's all about how you feel. And it's all about what you're feeling. And it also, like, this can also be said, because with fitness, we often go from a place of, it doesn't matter what you look like, what weight are you moving? Well, moving weight is cool. This doesn't matter what weight you're moving. It matters that you are feeling things in your body, and that you are doing things that you either had previously been incapable of or were too nervous to try. And you're doing them. You're out there doing the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're doing the thing.
You're doing the thing.
So how has this helped you, do you feel like, be a better, like, trauma-informed coach?
So for me, it's kind of just the realization. So one of my favorite quotes from this entire thing was to speak in question marks, not periods. And so that means when you're getting to know people as a coach, or really this can translate into anything in life, to just be more curious about someone's reactions. So a lot of times as a coach, especially, there's a lot of toxic coach energy out there where they're like, oh, if my athlete does not show up, they just don't want it enough.
Yeah.
If my athlete doesn't want to push it to this level, they just don't want it enough. You don't know why your athlete is hesitant to do this thing. And if you're going with it at that shameful statement, they just don't want it enough, instead of saying, why do you not want to do this thing? One of those conversations is going to get you a lot more as a coach, and it also will get your athlete a lot more. But if you're not opening up that line of communication for your athletes, they're not going to give it to you. Because I know that if I had a coach that was like just making this blanket statement about what their perception of my effort was, or what my thing was, they don't care. They are just going to say what they think. They're not actually listening to me as an athlete,
or as a person.
Yeah. Like they're denying your existence as a breathing human, because they're viewing you out of what their opinion of you is, or what their experience is, and not what yours is. And as a coach, you need to be willing to look at athletes for what their experience is, because that's how you help them. You don't help them from your experience, you help them from their experience. And so what was really cool about that is, I mean, as a coach, I've never really had that problem being like, oh, they just don't want it enough. Because I have a lot of empathy. It's a blessing and a curse. It is what it is. But I've seen it a lot, and I have. If you push it far enough, we have all had those thoughts of why is my athlete not doing this? Oh, maybe they just
Or just why is this person
why is
not
this
doing
person not
this
doing this thing?
in their life? And
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like I even I have been guilty of that when it comes to people I love. I want them to make positive changes,
Mhm.
and I just kind of, and I'm like, why isn't she doing this? This is going to help her. This is going to make her feel better. This is going to, and I'm like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you
Mhm.
putting in the work?
Why aren't you putting in the work? Why aren't you doing the thing that I know will help you?
Yes. Which comes from a number one, a place of like, you are not the expert in anyone else's life but your own, Kelsey.
That's so that was I know that you'll like this because I've heard you say this before,
Mhm.
but as a trauma informed coach, like the main thing that you need to come from is to trust that your athlete knows their body best.
Mm.
And I've heard you say that.
Mhm.
I don't remember what you were upset about, but I remember you being like, "Don't tell me what I feel,
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
don't know what I feel."
Mhm.
And it's the same. Like you need to trust your athlete to tell you how they feel, and you go from there. You don't get to say that you think that they feel a certain way, and that's why they're doing X thing.
Yeah.
They're going to tell you.
I love that, just asking too, because a lot of people who have come into on their fitness journey, asking them how they feel might come back with, I don't know. And like genuinely don't know.
They don't know.
But posing that question is a really important pause for any person to be able to say, well, how do I feel?
Mhm.
Because a lot of people haven't gotten to a place where they can firmly advocate for themselves in a way of saying, don't tell me how I feel. I've got to that place.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a healthy boundary.
Yep.
But a lot of people have not gotten to that place yet. And even just creating an environment where you ask that question to get them to think lays the groundwork for in the future them asking themselves what they feel
Mhm.
and then being able to advocate for it.
Yep. Yeah.
Like you're setting the groundwork.
Yeah, you are. It's great. It's super cool. It's all, and like that's a lot of the thing about trauma informed coaching and cueing translates into like all of your relationships wherever you go.
Yeah.
So even as an athlete, if you start to recognize those things, if you are a mother or a father, it's going to translate into how you talk to your kids. It's going to translate into all your other relationships. And
Well,
so
just being question based
yes,
instead of assumption based
yes.
is a really important idea in general, because you could come up with a million ideas or assumptions as to why someone isn't doing something or why they're acting a certain way or why she won't even bench or something. You can come out with a lot of assumptions, but you actually don't know until you ask.
Mm-hmm. So you have to give them the opportunity to tell you.
Mm.
And you also have to do it in a way that makes them want to tell you.
Yes. Important second step.
That one's important too.
Can you talk about trauma informed cueing a little bit?
Yeah, so trauma informed cueing is uh it's kind of where you are aware of someone's window of tolerance and how you can leverage the autonomic nervous system response. So, a window of tolerance, I mean, if you just think of a window, it can be open or closed, right? And so, the more wide open your window is, the more air can come through. The more closed your window is, the less air can come through. So, if someone's window of tolerance is very open, that means you can ask them to let in, that means they have a lot of capacity to take uncomfortable situations and be okay with it. And that there's a lot of space for them to try all of these things. If their window is a little bit smaller, you have to be more aware of seeing what something is that they're like super comfortable doing, or something that normally they're super comfortable with doing, but right now might feel a little about doing. And how you can kind of guide so that your session or whatever you're doing with them is something that's either helping open that window or staying within that window, because once someone is outside of their window of tolerance, you have to figure out how to get them back. Otherwise, not much is going to get done. So you have to figure out kind of if someone is like hyper aroused, so they have too many tasks, they're on edge. If you're asking them to do all of these super complicated movements like max out your back squat today, or give me max effort pull-ups, something that is just that they have to really think hard about, that's probably going to be too much for them if they're already on edge. So you'll probably give them more of something like, we're going to work in our 65% range today. We're going to think, I want you to think about just pushing through the floor today. I want you to think about just bracing your core, just breathing, kind of more like calming, still movement based things, but nothing crazy. If someone is hypoaroused, they're more like frozen, can't focus, things feel hazy. You try to give them, I still wouldn't ask them to max out, obviously. Like that's both of those. If you're too far to one edge, you are not inside your window of tolerance. But if you are hypoaroused, it's more like everything feels like a fog. I'll go here a lot versus the on edge one. I go into hypo a lot. So everything feels super, super fuzzy. And so something that would be good for them might be doing a deadlift or asking them to kind of just like focus on like one area of checking in with their body. But also you could have them
instead of like super complex movements where they have to think about a lot of things, snatching, for example.
It would be more like that. Maybe more conditioning based to try to like get them to move a little bit, get their heart rate up, get them kind of just more aware. So you want to try to stay inside that window.
I think that's a great point, because I think anytime you show up to training, you should check in on where your window is for that day. Like, where, like, am I super open? Am I showing up like at the top of my game? Like, I can take a bunch of information in right now. I can feel a lot of things. Like, I'm aware. Like, where's your tolerance at for the day? And even realizing that your window of tolerance and your expectation for your window of tolerance are two very different things.
They are, and they both change.
And they both change.
Or the hourly, really.
Yeah. Because I don't know if a lot of people are like this, but sometimes you want or you expect your window tolerance
to be open,
to be like wide open every day, all day. I show up at 100%. No, you don't.
No, depending on what you have going on, sometimes the window is half closed, sometimes it's a quarter open.
And like just being like, okay, the reality is this is where I'm at today, and maybe I need to adjust my training, maybe I need to adjust what I'm doing in the gym today based on that, without any shame attached to it.
That's a big one, is making sure that you're not shaming yourself there.
Because I feel like that's like, well, because if you show up and you're like, okay, I've got a cracked window today, just like a little crack. And like, what does that mean? But like, I have a max back squat programmed. Like, do I have max effort in me? Or am I just going to cry?
Exactly. Am I just going to hit something heavy? It's not going to feel how I want it to feel. And then I'm going to be like, you haven't been doing anything for the last 9 years.
You're not even, it's all over. You're not even strong anymore.
You're not even fit.
None of that's true.
Small. None of it's true.
None of it's true.
Your brain telling you lies.
You're lying to your brain is absolutely telling you lies. None of that is true. You are just in this day. And sometimes like working through it means that you are showing up and you're going to work to something heavy, but you're not going to max out.
And you're going to try not to care what number is on that bar. Or maybe if just lifting is like not it and you're like, I don't even want to touch the bar because I don't want to know what it's going to feel like. Maybe you're rowing.
I have been in those days. And you kind of got to know what type of person you are. There are less days that there are some days that I'm like, conditioning is not for me right now. I just want to.
Very few.
Less days of that. For me, I'm like, sometimes I'm like, I don't want to know what a bar feels like right now. Because I know it's not going to feel good.
I know it's not going to feel how I want it to.
And then am I going to just get upset? Am I going to get frustrated? Am I like, what is going to happen? Or could I just meet myself where I'm at and start some conditioning? Maybe see if I snap out of it. Yeah,
because sometimes that does happen. Sometimes if you manage to stay within your window of tolerance and drive yourself one way or the other, maybe lifting before your Metcon was not it, but maybe you get done with your Metcon and all of a sudden you're like, I feel so much better and I feel like I can definitely touch a bar. Or you just say, I feel so much better and I'm going to come back tomorrow and touch the bar. Because it's also good to recognize that just because you feel better, maybe it's okay to just leave it with you feeling better and you don't actually need to do the thing that you weren't sure about doing.
Must fail. I'm feeling a little bit better. I better go back to feeling awful.
I better go ruin it.
I love that because like when you stay within your window of tolerance, you're setting yourself up for success.
You are.
But when you don't stay within your window of tolerance, that's when maybe you have a cry. That I'm not saying crying's bad.
Crying's not bad. I'm someone that cries a lot.
For sure. I never cry. But I did one time in the middle of a back squat. Do you remember this?
I think I do.
I didn't actually cry. I had tears. I had tears in my eyes. I didn't actually cry, but I kind of wanted to. But like I was like, and then like after I was like, I feel a little bit better. I didn't even cry.
Crying is great for you. The other day in here, we're like all day I was not okay.
Yes.
And then I like walked up to Kelsey before we started conditioning, and I was like, I think I just want to touch you. And she was like, well, do you want a hug?
Because she can't. I'm like doing something. I walked back in the room. She came up to me and she's just standing next to me, like no, like awkwardly. Entire gym, like her arm is touching my arm, and I was like, "Hi."
I was like, I just want to touch you right now.
I was like, okay.
And then I started crying for no reason, and then the Metcon went fine. I was like, damn, I feel better.
Sometimes, damn, I feel better.
Whole new bitch.
Sometimes you just need that. You just need
that release, whatever that release crying is. I don't know the science behind that one.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is science behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, our bodies would absolutely not be doing it.
True.
You know what I mean?
Mine, it just sucks it up.
Yeah.
It just absorbs it.
You get a little glassy-eyed sometimes.
I did a couple times. Can you talk a little bit about the mental versus emotional aspects of some of this stuff?
Yeah, the mental versus, sorry. You said mental versus emotional?
Yeah.
Perfect. So like the mental versus emotional aspects are kind of like when you're talking about programming, or with what your athletes want to do, does your athlete need something that's really predictable? Yeah. Are we always doing squats on Tuesday? Are we always doing deadlifts Wednesday? Most everyone needs to know why they're doing something, but sometimes people really want a reason. Like, so we're establishing the purpose for a movement because sometimes people feel better. Most of the time people feel better if they know that they're not doing aimlessly just doing movements.
Yes.
Most of the time, which is why.
Or there's like a structure to their program.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That like, are we on a squat cycle? Like, are we on a gymnastic cycle? Like, what's going on?
You want someone with a plan, you know?
Yeah.
So
plans make us feel more at ease.
They do. They make us feel like we're in control.
Mm-hmm. Which is why I've preached this a lot, that you need to have some programming, whatever it is, and that going to the gym aimlessly is not getting the benefits that you could be getting out of the gym, and not following some kind of structured program is not getting the benefits.
Yep.
But like there's science.
There's science behind it. Not only is there science behind the fact that there is like progressive overloading with someone that knows how to do programming. So it's literally there's a plan to get better, but mentally for you to come in and not have to think of how you want to get better, when you have programming, you already have a plan printed out on that paper for you.
Yeah.
And that is your plan on how you are getting better in the gym. And so giving someone a plan and giving them a reason as to why they're doing this plan, what your end goal is for them, helps them trust you more.
Yeah.
And someone questioning that also, that doesn't mean they don't trust you. It's just that all of us have questions.
Yeah.
And it's important for us to be able to answer those. And that helps people feel listened to. And so that helps with their kind of mental aspects. For the emotional ones, it's like showing up. Is your athlete showing up? How they talk to themselves. So a lot of the time, some of us can be wired to speak a little more negatively about ourselves. And
do you want to say what that looks like or no?
Coming into this podcast, I was like, did you completely misunderstand this course? You don't know anything.
That's what negative self-talk sounds like. Even working back from that, so you have come a long way.
I have.
When it comes to
come a long way.
Self-talk. I just want to say like that straight out. But there are definitely places to improve.
There are places to improve.
And there's been this kind of scale that I've watched you go where like you'll do something really well and say like, I don't hate how that felt
Oh,
today.
right, yeah.
And I'm like, why are you putting this negative spin on it? But
It's better
and
than me being like, "I did like shit."
yeah, like
Yeah.
there's a step ladder, right?
Yep.
Into being like, my cleans look amazing.
Mhm.
I'm moving incredible weight.
Mhm.
Or I don't hate how these cleans felt today. I'm like, okay, well, we're on the stairs.
Improvement.
We're working towards it.
Yeah.
And I can understand and appreciate that so many women have been so conditioned to not want to air bunnies brag
Yep.
or talk themselves up in a positive way,
Because
even though we know it's good for
yeah.
ourselves.
Well, because 'cause we've been taught by the patriarchy
Yeah.
that confidence on a woman is unbecoming.
Yeah.
So we've always been taught to not be like, "Oh my god, my squat looked great today. Oh
Yeah.
my god, my butt looks great today."
Yeah.
All these other
I'm
things.
so freaking strong.
I'm so
I'm
strong.
so strong. I'm so fit. Like, and sometimes, like, especially for a lot of people that are starting out, that feels super forced and not authentic. And I totally get that. And you
Mhm.
just want to get on the staircase, like when you have a really great day, of saying maybe something along the lines of like, I don't hate how I moved today. Like, I would insert, if we're going for ideal, not to have a negative connotation in there.
Mhm. Mhm.
And to kind of start to move towards some of those things, but I get it why we don't.
Yeah.
But as long as you're on the
As long as you're
scale
somewhere.
moving
And you can
towards
even
it.
say like, it doesn't even have to be like, "I did this amazing thing today." It could
Yeah.
just be like, "This felt really good today."
Yeah. Mm.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So then, like, that's a good step in the direction. If being like, "I did this thing really great today," still feels just so wildly uncomfortable to you
Yeah.
that like you don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
So just saying that, like, this thing felt really good today, or even like the I'm proud of doing something today.
Yeah.
I'm proud I did something today. So you can notice that in yourself, but as a coach, you will notice it in your athletes, and you try to find ways to help them
Mm.
speak more positively about themselves.
Yeah.
Um, there's also the asking for help. If you are unfamiliar with certain things in the gym, sometimes asking for help in any sense feels vulnerable to a lot of people.
Mm.
And
Yeah, it does.
Hmm.
It's terrifying.
There's someone in this room that's also right for asking for help all the time. Um, but yeah, so not like when someone is coming to see you to learn, they're
Mm.
asking for help. And so that in itself is the step in the right direction. There's taking risks, trying things that they might not get the first time. You might fail this weight. You might not have a pull up. You might want 5 pull-ups and you only get 4, that kind of thing.
Mm.
And tolerating the fact that there is unpredictability. So sometimes if you get really comfortable with your programming or with your coach, you don't actually need to know the plan before you step foot into the gym. You just say, "What are we doing today?"
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "We're going to do this."
Mm-hmm.
Or you open up your programming and you're like, "What am I doing today?" And so then there's that unpredictability, and you're learning to roll with the punches in that respect more
Mm.
than always needing a plan. And having a plan is great, but at some point, yeah, you will take that step where like you're not so pressed to have a plan. You're
Yeah.
not so pressed to know
You're not
exactly
in a
what you're doing.
panic
You're not in a
if
panic
you
if you
don't
don't
know.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you still get one when you show up, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
which is important, but you're not panicking just because you don't know it right this
Well,
instant.
you've built that trust that you will get one when you show
Yep.
up, that you're not like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen today.
Hmm.
Like, there is a certain ease from having a plan, knowing that it's like under control. It's part of your like controlled chaos life. Like,
Hmm.
this is what's going to happen at this time. That's why I always tell people too to set a time to get to the gym, because
Schedules.
like that is really important for your mind and important for your body. Like, it's going to happen at this time. I trust myself that it's going to happen at this time. I have a plan at that time. Like, it takes away all of these friction points to you not getting there.
Hmm.
You know?
Exactly. And it brings back to the podcast where you said you're cashing your own checks.
Yeah.
You're just like you showing up cashes that check. That builds confidence in you
Mm-hmm.
to do the thing,
Mm-hmm.
which builds confidence everywhere else.
Well,
So
if you have confidence in yourself.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So super cool.
It's super cool.
Brain.
So any last thoughts as to, why someone might want to choose weightlifting? to include weightlifting in their fitness journey
Mhm.
if they've experienced trauma, or any like closing thoughts?
So I love that obviously weightlifting can straight up change your brain chemistry or those neurological pathways.
Yeah.
It's a really great way to redirect some anxiety that you're feeling. So sometimes, once again, when we go back to that window of tolerance, if you're anxious and you're still within that window, you're just agitated and uncomfortable. Sometimes instead of having that anxiety floating around out there, I feel like this is really relatable for you.
Mm,
Having that anxiety floating around out there is not doing anything for you. But if you can be like, I'm gonna channel this energy that I don't know what to do with into standing up this lift,
yeah.
you're now using that thing that could potentially have made your day not as good
Mm,
into something that made your day better.
mhm,
Right. So weightlifting has that ability to take energy and channel it somewhere. So
mhm.
you're channeling it into a place that gives you growth. Um,
I love
I know, I
that.
figured you would. um, Once again, the speaking in question marks and not periods, like take that into any situation that you're in. Um, and that when you are with the public, if you're working out with friends, if you're working out with your coach, if you are coaching someone, then understand that like everyone's been through something traumatic,
Mm,
regardless of if they know it or not. And us being more aware of asking why they're acting a certain way, saying a certain thing, or doing a certain thing, instead of us just making an assumption of it, is super important. And that's in the gym and it's outside of the gym,
yeah.
because you can see if you think about this from like an outside view, or you're kind of just like looking at it all under a magnifying glass, you can see why certain behaviors that you might see in a gym that you find off-putting are
Yeah.
actually someone's trauma responses.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
that helps you build a better relationship, not only with yourself, but like you're going to be a lot less angry at the world if
Yes.
you see these things that normally irritate you from a place of understanding. And you're like, oh, they might just be acting this way because they're a human that is doing their best, not because they're an asshole. And I'd say that viewing someone from that different angle is going to make you a happier person for sure.
Oh my God, so much happier.
Yeah.
I can't even stress that enough, because I think I say this a lot, because I try to bring into perspective of when someone is lashing out at you, or when someone is, coming at us really angrily, like whether it's in an ad, whether it's to support, whatever. And I'll always say the thing where I'm like, imagine what type of day, that person is having to want to lash out at us who are, overall here trying to do good things,
Mm-hmm.
who came from that place. And if you just separate yourself from some of the things or some of the behaviors that people are doing that may irritate you, you separate yourself from it and really look at them in a question mark,
Yeah.
in a way that you say, like, I wonder, I wonder, I
I wonder.
wonder what happened to, make you act that way, or like, I wonder what you're going through right now, or like, are you okay?
Yeah. The overarching question, are you okay?
But just like taking yourself away from it takes away that anger that you kind of like fester up into, like, why is their behavior doing this to me, kind of a
Because
thing.
chances are they're not doing it to you.
No.
They're not doing it at you.
Mm-mm.
They are in their own world
Yeah.
doing whatever they're doing to cope with whatever they're coping with.
Whatever they do. And I really feel like when you get to the gym and you have so many different people and so many different aspects of their life, and like, someone leaves a machine and they didn't wipe it down, or someone, comes on the machine right next to you and there was like 5 there, they didn't have to come right next to you. And you feel all these like small, like minor irritants that you could get pretty angry with people. But if you separate yourself from that a little bit and say, like, that person honestly might be in such a fog that they didn't even see that there was more things open.
Yeah.
Their anxiety coming into the gym could be so freaking high that they didn't even see me standing here.
They didn't see you there. They just know they always hit the second machine.
Yeah.
They always hit the second machine in.
Mm-hmm.
That's their target point. That's what they're going
I
for.
remember going into the gym and feeling so anxious that I would just like beeline it around, because I was like, I might not know how to use something. I might like blah, blah, blah. Like, I was just like so anxious. And like at that time, before I had found CrossFit, like I didn't really have that outlet, because it was just like, well, I was looking for my outlet, but I was on the elliptical for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't get that like surge of like competition or rush or like that
Well, because you
energy
can zone
wasn't.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, it
On one
was
of
just like,
those.
well, this is the answer. What the
Mhm.
hell are these people talking about? Like, it's like when people talk about runner's high, and you're like, I don't
You're like,
know, I don't know what that
but
is.
if you ask me to go hit a heavy clean,
Yeah,
I'm not thinking about much
no.
besides that clean. And then when it's
In
done, you
that
get that
high,
high.
yeah, that you get after, like I feel like it's just, we talk about being strong and resilient and some of these qualities that we want to have, and then we separate them from the gym when they're so closely related.
It's all related.
Yeah.
It's all.
And there's literally brain chemistry that we talked about today that can bring it right back for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love the whole thing. I love that our listeners can take this into their personal lives and be able to show themselves some compassion and look what their window of tolerance is maybe for that day.
Yep.
And adjust accordingly.
Yep. And also, if you're one of our athletes and you are having a day and we've programmed in max out,
Yeah.
and you're just not sure and you need that reassurance, you can feel free to post in the group or in the app and like tag us and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling today. And we are more than happy to guide you to telling you maybe a percentage to hit or maybe to do something else instead.
Maybe today's a 75% day.
Maybe you just need to hear that from someone that you trust.
Yes.
And we are always here for that. And we are always understanding. And we're never going to think that you're not working as hard as you could be if you're like, I am having a day and I cannot do this thing that you've asked me to do. And it's like, no, you're still doing the thing that we asked you to do. You're just going to do it differently. So you're still doing it. You're still successfully doing something.
Yes.
And if doing even
and
nothing,
the overall goal
Yeah.
is to be a happier, healthier person.
Exactly.
And you're reaching that whether you're lifting your max or not.
Exactly. Exactly. And like everyone's 100% looks different for them every single day. And so feel free to ask us any questions if you need that permission, because sometimes people need that permission to
at some point along their journey.
Yeah.
I had this like one last ending thought that I would, when you were talking about this idea, that just different coaching cues and, knowing an athlete and just knowing what you need at that time. What came into my mind was a super frustrating workout for me, where I started failing muscle ups over and over and over. And I was getting pissed. Like, I was boiling up to the point, and my coach literally walked over and he was like, go take a walk, and like sent me out of the gym to walk around. I think I had to go touch a wall that was like further away, like go touch a wall and come back. And it was just a task, very specific. Go touch this wall and come back. And he wasn't mad when he said it. He was very specific in the thing that I had to go do. And it was super calm. And I like went and did it and like came back and like in the process had to take a couple breaths.
Yeah, you had to breathe. You had to figure it out. You were out of that really loud, agitating environment, because in CrossFit we really like loud, agitating environments.
Yeah.
Especially when we're conditioning.
Yeah.
We're like, turn it up. I don't want to hear myself breathe.
I don't want to hear my suffering.
I want to hear my grunts.
But sometimes you have to be that check for yourself.
You do.
You have to say like, I need to walk away from this.
Exactly. Well, and the fact that he gave you a task that you could accomplish.
Yes.
Walking and touching a wall, you're like, I can do that.
I can do that.
So if you've been failing a bunch of stuff, sometimes you just need that bone thrown to you. And you're like, okay, I did the task that I was asked to do. I touched the wall.
Yep. Okay, I did it.
I did it. And then either sometimes you're ready to come back into it, or sometimes that's just where you are for that day. And that's okay too.
Yep.
I don't know how you ended that. Did you come? What did you do?
When I came back, he told me the a number of attempts that I had left.
Okay.
For the day.
Okay.
Before I was going to stop, and he lowered the number, so I had an attainable number, and I was failing over and over. He said you have 2 more, so I didn't get the like you're done with this workout. You have just 2 more, and that was feasible for me at the time, and like I had enough of a break that I could
come back and do 2 more.
Yeah, and ended on a high note, which it was going towards a really low note. It was going towards like quitting CrossFit. I was so mad.
The sport's stupid.
I was like, the sport's the worst. Anyway, hopefully this was helpful for you guys today. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on, and think you did so amazing.
He thinks. Did my best.
And explaining all of this stuff, and hopefully this helps you guys. We love you.